Good evening, friends. Let's start with a truth that might make us uncomfortable. How many of us have stayed too long at a table where we weren't being served, or chased someone for love, approval, or acknowledgement, only to find ourselves empty-handed and emotionally drained? Our sense of worthiness is the foundation upon which we build every relationship, every dream, and every decision. Yet so often we give it away as if it's something someone else can determine or validate. We find ourselves seeking approval, bending over backward to be chosen, or settling for less than we deserve because deep down we've allowed our worth to become negotiable. But let me tell you this, your worth is not up for debate. It is not something to be earned, bargained for, or proven. It just is. When we forget this truth, we enter dangerous territory. We start begging, not necessarily in the literal sense, but emotionally. We beg for attention, love, and recognition in ways that slowly erode our self-esteem. Maybe it's in a relationship where we tolerate neglect because we're afraid of being alone. Maybe it's in our careers where we overextend ourselves, hoping someone will finally see our value. Or maybe it's in our friendships where we shrink to fit into spaces that don't honor our true selves. I remember a time in my life when I was caught in this cycle. I was in a relationship that felt like walking on eggshells. Every text message I sent, every gesture I made was rooted in a deep fear of not being enough. I thought if I could just be better, more patient, more accommodating, less me then, maybe I'd finally be worthy of the love I so desperately wanted. But here's the truth that hit me like a tidal wave one day. I was already worthy. And the problem wasn't my lack of effort or perfection. The problem was that I had handed over my worthiness to someone who didn't see it. Worthiness isn't about perfection. It isn't about being everything to everyone. It's about recognizing that you, as you are right now, are enough. Not because of what you've achieved, what you look like, or what you can do for others, but simply because you exist. When we understand this, we stop negotiating our worth in places where it was never in question to begin with. But let's be honest, this is easier said than done. Society has conditioned us to believe that our value is tied to external factors, our accomplishments, our appearance, our relationships, and even our productivity. We're told that if we just work harder, look better, or achieve more, then we'll finally be worthy. But this is a lie that keeps us stuck in a never-ending chase for something we already have. The shift begins when we start treating ourselves with the love and respect we often reserve for others. Think about how you show up for your closest friends or family members. You listen to them, encourage them, and remind them of their worth, especially when they've forgotten it themselves. Now imagine doing the same for yourself. Imagine waking up every day and affirming, I am enough. Imagine walking away from situations that make you question your value, not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing yourself. When we embrace our inherent worthiness, everything changes. We stop begging for love and start attracting relationships that honor and uplift us. We stop chasing approval and begin living authentically, knowing that we don't have to prove anything to anyone. And most importantly, we stop settling for crumbs when we deserve the whole feast. This doesn't mean we won't face challenges or moments of doubt. Worthiness is not a destination, it's a practice. It's the daily decision to show up for ourselves, even when it's hard. It's the courage to say no to what doesn't serve us and yes to what does. And it's the belief that no matter what happens, we are enough just as we are. So let's stop negotiating, let's stop begging, let's stand in our worth unapologetically and wholeheartedly. Because when we do, we not only transform our own lives, but we also inspire others to do the same. And that is a gift the world desperately needs. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They're perceived as walls meant to keep people out or as selfish acts that prioritize one person's needs over another's. But in reality, boundaries are one of the most profound expressions of love and respect, both for ourselves and for others. They're not about rejection or control. They're about creating a space where authenticity and connection can thrive without resentment, burnout, or imbalance. Think about a relationship where boundaries were missing. Maybe it was a friendship where you were always the one giving, showing up, and supporting, but when you needed the same, you were met with silence or indifference. Or perhaps it was a romantic relationship where you felt obligated to compromise your needs and desires just to keep the peace or avoid conflict. Over time, relationships like these don't just drain you, they erode your sense of self. Without boundaries, we risk losing ourselves in the service of others. We overextend, overcommit, and ultimately feel overwhelmed, and what often follows is resentment. Resentment that builds and builds and builds until it manifests as anger, withdrawal, or even the end of the relationship. But here's the truth that resentment isn't caused by the other person. It's caused by our own failure to set and enforce boundaries. This was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. I used to think saying yes to everything made me a good person, a kind, generous, and dependable friend or partner. But deep down, I wasn't saying yes because I was saying yes because I was afraid. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of being seen as selfish, afraid of being rejected. And every time I ignored my own needs, I told myself the lie that they didn't matter. But they did. They did. Boundaries are not about building barriers, they're about building bridges. When we set boundaries, we create a framework for healthy relationships where both people can show up as their full selves. A boundary says, I value this relationship enough to be honest about what I need and to respect what you need. 2, it's an act of mutual care, not separation. Take, for instance, the act of saying no. How many times have you said yes to something you didn't want to do, only to feel exhausted, bitter, or taken advantage of later? Saying no isn't an act of rejection, it's an act of self-respect. It's acknowledging your limits and honoring them. And when done with kindness and clarity, it allows others to see you as a person with needs, not just someone who exists to fulfill theirs. Boundaries are also about teaching people how to treat us. Every time we accept behavior that crosses a line, we send the message that it's okay. And the more we allow it, the harder it becomes to reclaim our space. But when we set a boundary, we communicate our values and needs clearly, which helps others understand how to engage with us in a way that strengthens the relationship. Here's the thing, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable at first. It might even feel selfish or harsh, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that putting yourself first is wrong. But it's not selfish to take care of your well-being. It's essential. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot show up fully for others if you're constantly running on empty. Boundaries also allow others to grow. When we set limits, we give people the opportunity to rise to the occasion, to take responsibility for their actions, and to meet us in a space of mutual respect. And yes, some people may resist at first. They might push back or test those boundaries. But those who genuinely care for you will respect them because they value you as a whole person, not just for what you can do for them. The most beautiful thing about boundaries is that they foster deeper connection, not distance. They create relationships rooted in respect, understanding, and trust. When we honor our own needs and communicate them with clarity and compassion, we invite others to do the same. And that's where true intimacy begins, not in sacrificing ourselves for others, but in standing beside them as equals, whole and worthy. So let's change the way we see boundaries. They're not walls to shut people out. They're not selfish acts of defiance. They're an act of love. Love for ourselves, for our energy, for our time, and for the relationships that matter most. When we practice boundaries, we create a life that reflects our values and a heart that remains open, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. And that kind of love is the most powerful kind of all. Clarity is often seen as a tool for communication, but it is so much more than that. In the realm of relationships, whether they are romantic, familial, or professional, clarity is one of the greatest acts of kindness we can offer to ourselves and to others. It's a gift that ensures both parties feel seen, heard, and understood, and it paves the way for connection based on mutual respect rather than confusion and frustration. Yet, despite its power, clarity is frequently overlooked in favor of ambiguity, mixed signals, and passive-aggressive behavior. The truth is, clarity is a cornerstone of healthy relationships, and to withhold it is to leave the other person in the dark. When we speak without clarity, we create an emotional fog that others must navigate. Think about it when someone is unclear about what they want or need. It puts the onus on the other person to guess. And in that guessing, feelings get hurt, misunderstandings happen, and resentment often builds. We've all been there wondering if we missed a cue, second-guessing our actions, or worrying if we did something wrong, simply because the message wasn't delivered in a direct, clear way. That kind of emotional uncertainty is exhausting. It pulls us out of connection and into confusion. Being unclear also leads to assumptions, and assumptions can destroy relationships. When we're not clear, people will fill in the blanks with their own interpretations, often from a place of fear or insecurity. They might believe that we're angry with them when we're actually just stressed, or that we don't care about them when in reality we're just overwhelmed. The emotional labor of having to decode someone else's mixed messages is taxing, and it creates a sense of distance. No one wins in this scenario. Clarity, on the other hand, eliminates that guesswork. When we communicate directly, we show others the respect they deserve by being upfront and honest about our needs, feelings, and intentions. It's a way of saying, you matter enough for me to be clear. And while honesty can sometimes feel uncomfortable, it is always kinder than the alternative of leaving people to wonder. Think about a time when someone was straightforward with you, when they told you what was going on without beating around the bush or leaving things unsaid. It probably didn't feel bad, in fact. It likely made you feel heard and understood. That's the magic of clarity. It builds trust and connection. Now, this doesn't mean being harsh or abrasive. Clarity doesn't require cruelty, and being direct doesn't mean being unkind. Clarity comes from a place of respect for the other person's time, emotions, and energy. It's about saying what needs to be said, but saying it in a way that is compassionate and considerate of the other person's feelings. We can be clear without being hurtful, honest without being judgmental, and firm without being aggressive. The goal is not to win the conversation or prove a point, but to ensure that everyone is on the same page. It's the kind of communication that says, I care about this relationship enough to be transparent. And here's the key: clarity helps prevent hurt feelings in the long run. Imagine a situation where you're frustrated with someone but don't express it directly. Instead, you act passive-aggressively or distance yourself, hoping they'll pick up on the signs. What happens next? That person doesn't know what's wrong, and they may even feel confused or rejected. By the time they figure it out, the frustration has snowballed and the relationship has been damaged. But if you had communicated your feelings clearly from the beginning, there would have been no guessing and no assumptions. You would have created space for an open conversation and the chance for resolution rather than letting the situation fester. In relationships, clarity is kindness because it fosters a culture of openness and mutual understanding. It's about making sure the other person doesn't have to walk on eggshells around you, wondering what you really think. It's about being the person who provides a safe, clear space where people can speak their truth and feel heard. And it's about setting a precedent that says, I am willing to be vulnerable with you, and I trust that you will do the same. When we practice clarity, we invite others to do the same, creating an environment where transparency becomes the norm, not the exception. So the next time you find yourself tempted to withhold your truth, to skirt around an issue, or to communicate in vague, passive ways, remember this: clarity is kindness. It may require courage to be direct, but the respect and trust it builds in return are invaluable. By being clear, you are not only being kind to the other person, you are also being kind to yourself, giving yourself the freedom to live authentically and honestly. In the end, clarity nurtures the connections that matter most, creating deeper bonds built on understanding, respect, and love. The courage to walk away is one of the most difficult yet empowering acts we can make in our lives. It's often misunderstood as a sign of weakness or giving up, but in reality, it takes an immense amount of strength to walk away from something, whether it's a relationship, a job, or a situation that is no longer serving you. Walking away is not about running from conflict or avoiding discomfort. It's about recognizing your own worth, your limits, and your right to choose a life that aligns with your values. It's about standing up for yourself, even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world. The truth is, we often find ourselves in situations that drain us, relationships that have become toxic, jobs that no longer inspire us, or environments where we're being undervalued or mistreated. And despite how much we may want to walk away, we stay. We stay out of fear, out of obligation, or because we don't believe that we deserve something better. We believe that if we just push a little harder, endure a little more, or try a little longer, things will change. But sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to walk away not because we're giving up, but because we're choosing to move towards something better. When we walk away, we are choosing ourselves. We are choosing self-respect, peace of mind, and emotional well-being over the comfort of staying in a situation that no longer aligns with our growth or happiness. Walking away requires the kind of self-awareness that many people spend their entire lives searching for. It requires the courage to face the unknown, to let go of what's familiar, and to step into a future that, while uncertain, holds the promise of something more fulfilling. In relationships, walking away can be particularly challenging. We often find ourselves clinging to people, even when it's clear that the relationship is no longer healthy or mutual. We may be afraid of being alone, or we might hold on to the hope that things will get better. But the truth is, when a relationship is toxic, staying is a form of self-betrayal. By staying in something that isn't right for us, we allow ourselves to be diminished, to shrink, to put others' needs ahead of our own. Walking away doesn't mean we don't care about the other person. It means we care about ourselves enough to acknowledge that the relationship is no longer contributing to our growth, happiness, or sense of peace. Similarly, in our careers, walking away is often seen as failure. We've been conditioned to think that quitting is the same as giving up. But sometimes walking away from a job, a project, or an environment that drains us is the most empowering thing we can do. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It takes courage to walk away from the security of a paycheck, from the comfort of a known routine, and from the fear of what might come next. But when we walk away from situations that no longer serve us, we open ourselves up to new opportunities, new passions, and a future that is more aligned with who we truly are. Walking away also means releasing the need for validation from others. When we stay in a situation because we're afraid of what others will think, we give away our power. We let their opinions dictate our actions. But the courage to walk away is the courage to prioritize our own values and needs over the expectations or judgments of others. It's the courage to say, this is my life and I have the right to make decisions that support my well-being. The process of walking away is rarely easy. It often involves pain, disappointment, and a deep sense of loss. But in that pain, there is also freedom. The moment we walk away, we are no longer chained to a situation that no longer serves us. We reclaim our power. We give ourselves permission to move forward and to create a future that is more aligned with who we are becoming. And in the long run, the courage to walk away is what leads us to the courage to move towards something better, a life that is full of possibility, peace, and self-respect. Walking away isn't about giving up, it's about choosing to move forward. It's about understanding that sometimes the best way to honor ourselves is by walking away from what's holding us back. It takes courage to step into the unknown, but in that courage, we find the strength to embrace new opportunities and the clarity to recognize that we deserve more than what we're settling for. So if you're in a situation that no longer serves you, remember this: walking away is not a sign of failure. It's an act of bravery, a commitment to your own well-being, and a declaration that you are worthy of a life that honors your true self. Connection thrives on authenticity because it is only through genuine, unguarded interaction that we can truly see and understand one another. In a world where surface-level interactions are often the norm, we've lost touch with the power of real, authentic connections. We hide behind masks, carefully curated personas, and filtered versions of ourselves, thinking we have to fit into a certain mold to be loved or accepted. But in doing so, we prevent ourselves from forming deep, meaningful relationships that are built on trust, vulnerability, and mutual understanding. Authenticity isn't about perfection, it's about being real. It's about showing up in the world as our true selves without pretense or the need for approval. When we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, the messy, imperfect, complex individuals that we create the space for others to do the same. It's in that raw, vulnerable space that real connection happens. It's where people can be honest about their fears, dreams, joys, and struggles without fear of judgment. And it's where the magic of human connection lies. When we connect authentically, we are no longer performing or trying to impress others. We are simply being present. And that's when people can sense the difference. Think about the relationships in your life that feel the most meaningful, the ones where you can be your true self without fear of rejection or misunderstanding. These are the relationships that are built on a foundation of authenticity. They allow for the freedom to express who we are, to share our thoughts and emotions without holding back, and to experience the depth of what it means to truly be seen and heard. In contrast, when we are not authentic, we create distance between ourselves and others. We wear masks to protect ourselves from rejection, judgment, or vulnerability, but in doing so, we prevent others from really getting to know us. And when we aren't fully known, we can't fully connect. We may have many acquaintances, but the truly deep relationships, the ones that enrich our lives, require vulnerability and authenticity. If we are constantly putting on a front, we are not allowing others to see us for who we really are. And in turn, we are not able to fully connect with them either. Authenticity is the foundation of trust. Trust is the glue that holds relationships together, and it is built through honest, open communication. When we are authentic, we are transparent with our intentions and feelings. We don't hide behind half-truths or sugarcoat our emotions to avoid conflict. Instead, we speak from a place of truth and respect, which allows the other person to trust that we are being genuine. Trust is not something that can be built overnight. It takes time, consistency, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But when we show up authentically, we create a solid foundation for trust to grow. Being authentic also means embracing our flaws and imperfections. It's easy to think that we have to be flawless to be worthy of connection, but that's far from the truth. Authenticity is about accepting and sharing our imperfect selves with others. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we invite others to do the same. This creates a space of mutual understanding and empathy, where both parties feel safe to show up as their true selves, free from judgment. This kind of authentic connection is incredibly freeing. When we stop pretending to be someone we're not, we liberate ourselves from the burden of constantly keeping up appearances. We no longer have to live in fear of being found out or exposed. Instead, we can fully embrace who we are, knowing that the people who truly matter will accept us for our authentic selves, flaws and all. Another powerful aspect of authenticity is that it allows for deep emotional intimacy. The more we show up as our true selves, the more we invite others to do the same. And when two people are vulnerable with one another, sharing their true thoughts, feelings, and experiences, emotional intimacy grows. This intimacy isn't about grand gestures or perfectly timed words. It's about the everyday moments of openness, honesty, and connection that happen when two people trust one another enough to be themselves. In relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, authenticity creates a space where people feel safe to share their truths. It deepens the bond between people because it is rooted in the belief that each person is worthy of being known for who they truly are. And that's a powerful thing. Authentic connection isn't about finding someone who is perfect, it's about finding someone who is willing to be real. It's about creating a space where you can be yourself and they can be themselves, and together you can build something that is lasting, meaningful, and deeply fulfilling. So if you want to experience deeper, more meaningful connections, start by being authentic. Let go of the fear of judgment or rejection and show up as your true self. When you do, you will not only attract people who appreciate and value you for who you truly are, but you will also create the kind of relationships that are grounded in trust, emotional intimacy, and deep understanding. Authenticity is the key to connection, and when we embrace it, we unlock the power to create relationships that nourish, uplift, and inspire. Choosing yourself first is one of the most profound and transformative decisions you can make in your life. In a world that often demands that we prioritize others, whether it's family, work, friends, or society, it's easy to lose sight of our own needs, desires, and well-being. We've been taught that putting others first is an act of love, selflessness, and sacrifice. While caring for others is important, it should never come at the cost of your own sense of self or happiness. Choosing yourself first is not about being selfish or neglecting the needs of others. It's about acknowledging that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and that your own well-being is the foundation of all your relationships and endeavors. When you choose yourself first, you are acknowledging that you are worthy of care, attention, and love. You're making a commitment to your own health, mental, physical, and emotional. Too often, we get caught up in the demands of life, trying to meet expectations, solve problems, and be there for everyone around us. We give and give, leaving ourselves exhausted, depleted, and unfulfilled. In these moments, we lose touch with who we are and what we truly need. By choosing yourself, you are reminding yourself that your needs matter. You are making space for your own growth, joy, and fulfillment. Choosing yourself doesn't mean abandoning others. It doesn't mean neglecting your responsibilities or relationships. Rather, it means that you understand that in order to be the best partner, friend, parent, or colleague, you must first take care of yourself. It's about creating a balance that allows you to give from a place of abundance, not exhaustion. When we fail to prioritize ourselves, we risk burning out, becoming resentful, or losing our sense of purpose. But when we take the time to nurture ourselves, whether that's through rest, self-reflection, or pursuing our own passions, we become stronger, more grounded, and better equipped to show up for others in meaningful ways. Choosing yourself first requires setting boundaries. It's about saying no when something doesn't align with your values, needs, or energy. It's about recognizing that you don't need to please everyone or say yes to every request in order to be loved or appreciated. Boundaries are a form of self-respect, and they are essential in maintaining your sense of self. When you set boundaries, you create space for yourself to focus on what truly matters to you, whether that's your health, your creativity, your relationships, or your personal growth. Boundaries are a way of protecting your energy, and they allow you to show up fully in all aspects of your life. Choosing yourself is also about letting go of guilt. We often feel guilty when we take time for ourselves or prioritize our own needs. Society tells us that we should be constantly giving, doing, and serving others, and that any time spent on ourselves is selfish or indulgent. But the truth is, choosing yourself first is an act of self-care, not selfishness. When you care for yourself, you create the space to show up as your best self for others. You become more patient, more present, and more compassionate because you've taken the time to recharge and replenish your own reserves. Another key aspect of choosing yourself is embracing self-love. It's about cultivating a relationship with yourself that is nurturing, compassionate, and empowering. So often we are our own harshest critics, constantly judging ourselves for our perceived shortcomings or failures. But self-love means accepting yourself as you are, with all your imperfections and flaws. It means treating yourself with the same kindness and care that you would show to a friend. When you love yourself, you stop seeking validation from others because you recognize that your worth is inherent and not dependent on external approval. Choosing yourself first also involves aligning with your true desires and passions. It means pursuing the things that make you feel alive and fulfilled, even if they don't fit into the expectations that others have for you. It's about acknowledging your dreams and going after them, even when it feels uncomfortable or risky. When you choose yourself, you allow yourself to grow, evolve, and step into the person you are meant to be. This might mean letting go of relationships, jobs, or situations that no longer align with your values or goals. It might mean taking a leap of faith in a new direction, trusting that you deserve to live a life that feels authentic and meaningful. Ultimately, choosing yourself first is a powerful act of self-empowerment. It's about recognizing that you are the author of your own story, and you have the right to write a narrative that reflects your values, desires, and dreams. It's about making the conscious decision to live in alignment with who you truly are, rather than who others expect you to be. And when you choose yourself, you not only transform your own life, but you also inspire others to do the same. By prioritizing your own well-being and happiness, you create a ripple effect that encourages others to honor their own needs and pursue lives that are authentic and fulfilling. Choosing yourself first is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of self-love and self-respect. When you choose yourself, you create the foundation for a life that is balanced, meaningful, and filled with the kind of connections and experiences that truly nourish your soul. So give yourself permission to choose yourself first, to put your needs at the top of the list, and to show up for yourself in a way that honors your worth and potential.